I never thought the last time I stood in my parents' doorway would feel like standing on trial. My hands held a box of homemade cupcakes, my mom's favorite, and a wrapped scarf I'd gotten for my dad. It was just supposed to be a casual visit, maybe a small step toward healing. Instead, my father looked at me with that familiar coldness, the kind that made even the sunniest day feel like winter. "You're not family anymore," he said flatly, not even glancing at the gifts in my arms. "Don't come again." Behind him, my mother stood with her arms crossed and a smirk dancing on her lips, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "She deserves that," she muttered, loud enough for me to hear. I froze. Not in confusion. No, I'd seen this coming. Just not so blunt, not so final. My throat tightened, but I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. Instead, I nodded once. Slow. Calm. The kind of nod that said, "Got it." Message received. I set the gifts gently on the porch railing, turned on my heel, and walked away. Each step I took back toward my car felt heavy, but not with sadness. With clarity, with a fire slowly lighting in my chest. The kind of fire that doesn't burn things down, but builds something stronger. They thought they were shutting a door on me. What they didn't know was I'd already outgrown the house. And now, I was about to build something they'd never be able to ignore. I don't remember a single moment from childhood where I truly felt like I belonged. While most kids had bedtime stories, warm hugs, or at least someone clapping at their school plays, I had silence. Or worse, criticism. My brother, Zane, was the golden boy. He could break a window, skip class, or talk back to teachers, and my parents would just laugh it off. "Boys will be boys," my mom would say, ruffling his hair like he was a prince. Me, I got scolded for breathing too loud. I remember one Thanksgiving. Zane knocked over a whole tray of food. My mom brushed it off with a smile and said, "At least you were helping, sweetheart." A few minutes later, I accidentally dropped a spoon, and she snapped, "Be useful for once, Mira." It was always like that. At birthday parties, Zane got the best gifts. If he wanted my slice of cake, I was expected to give it up because you're the older one, or don't be selfish. Every chore landed on me. If the dog had an accident, it was my fault. If Zane lied, I was blamed. I was the built-in babysitter, the cleaner, the quiet one. My mother? Icy. She didn't yell much. She didn't need to. Her silence cut deeper than any scream. She would glance at me like I was something she tolerated, not someone she loved. Her affection was a currency she never spent on me. My father was always in the background, silent, nodding along with whatever my mother said. He never defended me, never stopped her, never once said, "Mira, I'm proud of you." So I learned to disappear. I stayed in my room. I read books. I kept my report cards perfect. I tried so hard to be impressive. I thought if I just did well enough, achieved enough, maybe they'd finally look at me and see a daughter they could love. But no matter how high I climbed, their eyes were fixed on Zane. It took me years to understand. It wasn't about how good I was. It was about who they chose to value. And they never chose me. Looking back now, I realize I was never truly part of that family. I was born into their house, but I was never invited into their hearts. I moved out the day I turned 18. There was no dramatic goodbye, no tearful hugs or parting advice. Just a silent breakfast, my father buried in the newspaper, and my mother rinsing a plate like I wasn't even there. I walked out with a second-hand suitcase and a heart that still, somehow, hoped one day they'd miss me. I worked 2 jobs while going to community college. I stocked shelves at night, tutored math in the afternoons, and did freelance design work whenever I could squeeze it in. There were weeks I lived on instant noodles and shared one bedroom with 3 other girls just to make rent. But you know what? I never complained, because for the first time I wasn't invisible. Every dollar I earned was mine. Every accomplishment, no matter how small, was mine too. No one overshadowed me. No one dismissed me with a cold glance. I built my world brick by brick, fueled by rejection and this stubborn fire that said, "I'll prove them wrong." After college, I landed an internship at a marketing firm. From there I climbed. Not by luck. Not because anyone opened doors for me, but because I refused to let any of them close. By 27, I owned my own digital branding agency. I had 10 employees, 6-figure contracts, and my name on the office door. I bought my first condo in cash. I donated to charities. I was by every measure successful. But success doesn't fill the holes family leaves behind. Every milestone made me ache. I wanted to call someone to hear, "We're proud of you, Mira." I wanted to host a holiday dinner where I finally sat at the center of the table. I wanted to matter to the people who had spent their lives reminding me I didn't. So I sent invites, birthday cards, holiday gifts. I still showed up to family events when I was included, smiling, offering help, hoping someone would finally say, "You did it." They never did. My mother would glance at my handbag and mutter, "Must be nice to waste money on labels." My father would ask about my business, then nod blankly and turn away before I finished answering. Zane, of course, always arrived late and left with leftovers, acting like the star of every room. I kept showing up, though, because some part of me, the part that still wanted to be loved, kept whispering, maybe next time. But eventually, even the strongest heart realizes when it's not wanted. And mine had been bruised for long enough. It wasn't like I hadn't tried. Over and over again, I kept reaching out, hoping something would shift. I sent them thoughtful gifts on holidays, things they once mentioned in passing. A record player for Dad after he said he missed vinyl. A handmade silk scarf for Mom, just like the one she used to admire when we passed the boutiques downtown. No notes asking for praise. Just love. Quiet and hopeful. I'd call and ask how they were. I'd offer help, like when their roof needed repairs or when Dad had trouble with his new phone. Each time, I'd hear that stiff politeness, that cold distance, the kind that says, "You're not welcome, but we won't say it out loud." They never reached out first. Not even once. But I told myself, maybe they don't know how. Maybe they're just not expressive people. Maybe I need to try harder. So I tried harder. Then came the wedding. My cousin Priya and I grew up like sisters. We'd build forts out of couch cushions, whisper secrets under blankets, cry on each other's shoulders after middle school heartbreaks. Even after I moved out, she stayed in touch. Or at least she used to. When I heard she was getting married, I waited for the invitation to arrive. Days passed, then weeks. I thought maybe it got lost. Maybe she had the wrong address. So I called Mom. "Oh, Mira," she said, her voice syrupy and fake. "It's just a small thing. You know, immediate family only." Immediate family. The words didn't hurt at first. They sat there in the air, like smoke, until I realized what they meant. I wasn't considered immediate family. I wasn't considered family at all. But Zane was going. So was every aunt and uncle, every cousin, even their neighbor from 3 houses down. I saw the pictures later on Facebook. My parents beaming in the front row. My brother making a toast. Priya in her gown, radiant, and not a single message from her. It felt like erasure. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just closed my laptop, walked into the kitchen, and stared out the window for a long time. Something in me cracked, but instead of breaking, it hardened. That was the last time I tried. The last time I bent over backward for people who made it clear I didn't belong. I had loved them enough for a lifetime, and they hadn't even offered basic decency in return. So I stopped. I stopped calling, stopped sending gifts, stopped waiting for their affection like a child outside a locked door. Because love should never feel like begging. And I was done begging. The confrontation wasn't planned. I didn't walk into my parents' house that day with some dramatic speech in mind. I just wanted answers. Closure. Maybe even a little truth. I rang the doorbell, holding a small basket of sweets. Diwali was a few days away, and while I knew they wouldn't invite me, a part of me still believed in tradition, in family, in decency. The door opened and Dad stood there. No smile, no greeting, just a cold glance before he stepped aside wordlessly to let me in. Mom sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't noticed I arrived. But I knew she had. She always did. I placed the basket on the coffee table. "I wanted to wish you both a happy Diwali," I said softly, my voice trying to stay calm. Mom didn't look up. "We're busy," she murmured. "I know," I said, swallowing the knot forming in my throat. "But I need to talk." That's when Dad finally spoke. "If it's about the wedding, don't start. We already told you. Only close family was invited." "Close family?" I repeated, my voice sharper now. "Do you hear yourself?" Mom raised her eyes then, smug, like she had been waiting for this moment. You're the one who distanced yourself, Mira. You left. You don't visit. You live in your little bubble. I left because you gave me no choice, I snapped. You've never treated me like part of this family. I tried again and again, but nothing was ever enough for either of you. Dad crossed his arms. You're too sensitive. Always have been. That's your problem. Everything's an issue. No, I said quietly. You know what the problem is? You all act like I never existed unless you need something from me. You talk about me like I'm a burden, and yet somehow my success, my money, still makes its way into your conversations. He glared at me, jaw tight. You don't get to come in here and lecture us. And you, I turned to Mom. You've never even pretended to like me. You treat my brother like a prince, and me like I'm disposable. She didn't deny it. Instead, she just smiled, tilting her head slightly. Maybe because he never turned his back on us. I laughed, short and bitter. Turn my back? You made it impossible to stay. You shut me out every chance you got. And when I still kept showing up, you pretended I was invisible. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that chokes. And then Dad said it. Maybe it's time you stop coming around at all. You're not part of this family anymore. His words didn't sting the way I thought they would. They landed like bricks, but not on my chest. On the wall between us. A wall that had been built slowly over years of coldness, silence, and rejection. He had just added the final stone. Mom looked pleased, her lips curled in that same mocking smirk I'd seen since childhood. I looked at both of them, really looked, and for the first time in my life, I didn't want their love anymore. I stood tall. No tears. No begging. I just said, then don't ask me for anything again. Not money. Not favors. Not my time. Nothing. Dad opened his mouth, probably to protest, but I was already walking away. Out the door. Down the steps. And for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. The letter didn't come easily. It took me 3 days, countless drafts, and several long walks around my apartment just to start writing. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because for the first time in my life, I wanted to say it perfectly, clearly, without apology, without softening the truth to protect the very people who never protected me. I titled it simply, Goodbye. Then I began, Dear Mom and Dad, this is not a letter asking for understanding, love, or closure. This is not a plea. This is a declaration. For as long as I can remember, I've been trying to earn a place in your hearts. I was the daughter who studied hard, worked double shifts, smiled through the pain, and kept showing up, even when you pushed me away. I sent gifts you never acknowledged. I called only to be met with cold tones and shorter silences. I let you guilt-trip me into funding repairs, bills, and birthdays, because a part of me still believed, maybe foolishly, that family meant something. But family, I've learned, isn't something you're born into. It's something that's built through love, support, and mutual respect. And in that sense, we've never really been a family, have we? I've spent my entire life chasing approval from people who treated me like an outsider. I was never the favorite. I was barely tolerated. My wins were ignored and my pain was mocked. You cheered for my brother, made excuses for his mistakes, and built him a pedestal while leaving me to climb alone. And yet, when I succeeded, you smiled, not with pride, but with calculation. What could Mira give us now? What would she pay for? So let me make this easy. Nothing. I will no longer be the emergency ATM. I will no longer take late-night calls to bail out problems I didn't create. I will no longer send birthday money, festival gifts, or plane tickets. I owe you nothing, because you gave me nothing of value except a reason to become who I am without you. I don't write this to hurt you. I write this so that, for once, you hear me, unfiltered, unashamed, and finally free. If someday you wonder where I went, remember this letter. Remember who pushed me away. I wish you peace, but not access. Goodbye, Mira. I sat back after the final sentence, reading every word with trembling fingers. Not because I was afraid of their reaction. I knew what it would be. Rage, denial, blame. But none of that mattered now. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. I printed the letter, folded it neatly, and placed it in a simple white envelope. No return address. No frills. Just a stamp and their home address, the same one I used to write on birthday cards when I was a child, hoping they'd smile. As I dropped the envelope into the mailbox, a strange stillness settled over me. Not sadness, not guilt, just peace. Back home, I opened my phone and blocked both their numbers. Then my brothers. Then aunts, uncles, anyone who used family as a weapon. I didn't cry. Instead, I made a cup of tea, curled up on my couch, and let the silence wrap around me like a warm blanket. Because this time it wasn't empty. It was mine. 3 months passed without a single word from me. Not a text. Not a call. Nothing. And in that silence, something strange happened. I started to feel alive. I was no longer waiting for an apology that would never come. No longer stretching myself thin to earn a love that was never offered freely. I was just living. Peacefully. Purposefully. Until the emails started. The first one came from my father. Just a short, awkward subject line. Can we talk? The message itself was brief. Hope you're well. We should reconnect. Love, Dad. No mention of the letter. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a weak attempt to slide back into my life as if the past hadn't occurred. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another email. This time longer. Your mother and I have been going through a tough time. I lost my job last month. The company downsized. We didn't want to tell you before, but things are hard. We could use some help if you're in a position to. Still no apology. Just need. I marked it as unread and closed my laptop. The texts began the next day. First my mom, then my dad. Then my cousin, who I hadn't spoken to since I was excluded from her wedding. They all carried the same message, just dressed differently. Your parents need you. You're doing well now, right? Don't turn your back on family. Family. The word burned every time I read it. The same people who told me I wasn't family anymore now remembered the word when it was convenient. One night, I came home from work and found 2 familiar figures standing outside my building. My parents. My mother wore that same expression, tight-lipped and proud, but her eyes darted nervously. My father looked older, smaller, like someone who had been hollowed out from the inside. Mira, he said, stepping forward, hands slightly raised like I might run. Please, just talk to us. I didn't stop walking. Mira, my mom snapped, still holding onto her pride like armor. You can't just ignore us. I reached the door and turned. You told me I wasn't family, I said calmly. So I'm treating you like strangers. But we need you, my father shouted, desperation leaking through the cracks. I gave you everything. I laughed, soft, bitter, and broken. No, you gave me trauma, and I turned it into strength. You didn't build this life, I did. And now you don't get to collect from it. I entered my building without another word. No screaming. No tears. Just silence. Later that night, I reread the last email my father sent. This time I didn't feel guilt. I felt closure. They hadn't changed. They weren't sorry. They were just scared and broke. And I was free. I didn't owe them answers or explanations. I didn't owe them money or second chances. The silence wasn't revenge. It was protection. From their chaos, from their cycle, they made a choice. Now they would live with it. I used to think blood was everything, that no matter how hard it got, family ties would somehow bring people back together, that if I was just better, kinder, more forgiving, more successful, they'd come around. They'd see me. But standing in the kitchen of my new home, laughter floating in from the living room, I realized something deeply freeing. Love is an ode. It's chosen. And I had finally chosen mine. After everything, after the letter, the silence, and the pain, I didn't spiral. I didn't sit by my phone waiting for the next guilt message. I didn't doubt my worth. I simply started living. I bought a house, not to prove anything, not to show off, just because I wanted a space that felt like mine. Warm wood floors, big windows, sunlight everywhere. A home where I could breathe. And I filled it not with antiques or family heirlooms, but with people who made me feel seen. Like Lena, my best friend since college, who brought over her dog and a homemade casserole the very first night I moved in. I don't care if you don't have plates yet, she said. We're celebrating. Or Maya, my coworker turned sister in spirit, who painted my guest room with me until 1 a.m., music blaring, paint in our hair. "This is our sanctuary," she said. "No ghosts allowed." Then there was Jonah, my mentor and now dear friend, who showed up with a bottle of champagne and said, "To Mira!" for burning bridges that led nowhere. And one by one, piece by piece, I built a world that felt like mine. The first holiday I hosted in my new home was small, but unforgettable. The scent of cinnamon and roasted vegetables filled the air. My friends came early to help decorate. String lights around the porch, candles on the table, mismatched chairs that somehow made everything feel more personal. We laughed. We told stories. There were no sharp looks, no snide remarks, no cold silences. Only warmth. Only love. When dinner was served, we raised our glasses. Jonah clinked his fork against his wine glass. "I propose a toast," he said, grinning, "to found families and the people who remind us we were never the problem." Everyone cheered. I lifted my glass last. And in that moment, I wasn't thinking about my parents. Not really. I wasn't thinking about the years I spent trying to earn their love or the ache of their absence. I was thinking about the life I'd built, the peace, the laughter, the ease. "To peace," I said, "and to choosing ourselves." That night, after everyone left and the house had quieted, I sat by the fireplace with a mug of tea. For the first time in years, I felt completely at home. No pretending, no proving, just me. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who cried quietly in her room after being called selfish for wanting attention, the one who bought gifts she couldn't afford just to get a smile from her mother, the one who kept showing up, even when she was told not to. I wanted to hold her hand. I wanted to tell her it was going to be okay. That one day, she'd stop chasing people who only wanted to hurt her. That she'd stop apologizing for breathing too loudly, for dreaming too big, for existing outside of what they expected. That one day, she'd have a table of her own, a seat she didn't have to beg for, and a family of her choosing who'd save her a spot every time. I still get messages sometimes. A distant cousin tagging me in old photos. A number I don't recognize asking, "Is this Mira?" I never reply, not because I'm angry, but because I'm finally at peace. And sometimes silence is the loudest kind of closure. They chose to let me go. And in doing so, they made space for a version of me that no longer needs their permission to feel worthy. I don't carry resentment anymore. Just gratitude for the lesson. And freedom for the life I get to live now. When I look around my home, at the faces that fill it, I don't feel broken or abandoned. I feel full, chosen, whole. This is my real family, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.